The story of Abel and Cain from the book of Genesis. After Adam and Eve were sent out of the Garden of Eden, God gave them two sons. The older one was Abel, and they grew to be young men. Cain became a farmer, while Abigail was a shepherd with a flock of sheep. They both had wicked hearts like their parents, and they often sinned. But Abel was sorry for his sin and believed the promise God had made to send a Savior. One day, Abel brought a lamb from his flock and offered it as a gift to God by killing it and burning it on an altar. The altar was a pile of stones which was flat on top. He built a fire on the altar and put the dead lamb in the fire to burn it up. Only the ashes and bones were left. This was called a sacrifice. By giving God his lamb, Abel showed God he loved him. God was pleased that Abel worshipped him in the way one day send people to die. The Savior would be gentle, patient, and innocent like the lamb, and would be killed as a sacrifice, just as the lamb was. But Abel's brother Cain did not turn from his sins or believe God's promise to send a Savior. He brought his offering. It was not a lamb, which was what God wanted, but some things from his garden, though God was not pleased with Cain's offering. Adam's first few sons were Cain and Abel. Cain was angry because Abel had obeyed God. Cain killed Abel. God surely punished him for doing this. When Cain realized that God wanted a lamb as a sacrifice, and had accepted Abel's sacrifice, but not his, he was angry with God. Yet, if God spoke kindly to him and asked him why he was angry, if Cain would bring a lamb, God told him then God would accept his gift and be pleased with him. Cain was angry with God, but took his anger out on Abel. One day they were in the field together. Cain killed Abel, and the ground was wet with his blood. Then God called to Cain, "Where is your brother Abel?" "How should I know?" Cain answered. "Am I supposed to look after my brother?" But God had seen what Cain had done, and now declared that all the rest of his life Cain must wander from place to place at his punishment for killing Abel, always afraid and with no home to stay in. And when Cain planted a garden, it won't grow well, so Cain would hardly have enough to eat. Adam lived for many years, and this finally was 930 years. He died, and his body became dust again in the Garden of Eden. 930 years is a very long time for a man to live, but in those days, God allowed people to live much longer than now. During those years, Adam and Eve had many children, and their children grew up, and those children had children and grew up and had children until there were many, many people in the world. One of them was Enoch. The many people in the Bible tell us that Enoch walked with God. This means that he loved God throughout. This means he loved God all the time. It was when he thought he and God were walking along like friends with Enoch, listening to what God was saying, trying to please him and obey everything he said. When Enoch was 365 years old, God did a wonderful thing for him. He took him up to heaven while he was still alive. So Enoch didn't die like other men. God just took him away to live with him. Enoch had a son named Methuselah, who lived to be 969 years old. The Bible doesn't mention anyone else who lived to be older than that. So Methuselah is called the oldest man who ever lived. Come back for the story of Noah.